YouTube, welcome back to another video. Stop training like a bodybuilder. A little bit of a clickbait title, but there is reference to this because when I'm talking about training, performance, and everything else, I'm looking at it from a 360 approach in terms of getting better at running, endurance events, and strength training. Okay, so if you do train push-pull legs, you do arm sessions, maybe you do chest, tricep, back biceps, legs like a bro, then you should watch this video, okay? And if you're someone who is also wanting to do running or taking part in endurance events. So first of all, we want to train smarter, okay? So if you want to be a bodybuilder and you purely train for aesthetics, then probably click off this video because it's probably not that applicable to you, and carry on training the way that you're training. However, I see loads of people, and I've been guilty of this. I put my hands up. I've been guilty to this probably towards the majority of the Ironman training, and then as things ramped up, I sort of understood the importance of training a certain way. But I see loads of lads, who want to do half marathons, ultra marathons, triathlons, whatever it may be, and their Strava comes up and it's push session, or it's arm session done, good arm session, or I just think, what on earth? No legs, lower body's not a thing, even though they're running 50k a week. They might do, if they do train legs, they might do a few leg extensions, a few sort of line leg curls, and then a couple of sets on the leg press. And it's just not going to be enough. It's just not going to allow you to get the most out of your training. And I'm someone that is, if I'm committing to a goal, I want to get the most out of it. So I want the biggest return on investment. So training arms, probably not going to be, it might be enjoyable, but it's probably not the smartest choice. You need to align your strength work to whatever the main goal is within the current training block. Okay, and obviously I will go into this in a little bit more detail. So where should I put myself? Let's go down here. Now, if we're looking at chest flies, no more chest flies. When it comes to your strength work in the gym, as well as getting better at running, they work hand in hand. Okay, you want a strong trunk, you want your core firing on all cylinders, you want your lower body nice and strong to help you become more efficient at your running, to obviously prevent injuries. You want to be able to have strong hips, glutes, adductors, abductors if you're doing uphill work, etc. You want unilateral strength in your upper body if you're doing swimming, rotation, whatever. Okay, so spending your time in the gym doing chest flies, lateral raises, bicep curls, sets on sets, they're not going to be the best return on investment. Now, do they have a place and can you still do them? Yes, but I wouldn't have them high on my list. Never say never. It might be a session that you may incorporate in like a deload, for example, when training intensity is a little bit less. I do bicep curls every session, sort of, but if I feel good, I've got time, got energy, I'll do a bit of arm work to finish. Okay, purely from when I cross the finish line, double biceps will look good for the photos. However, the main bulk of your session should follow a flow of some form of prep, mobility, a little bit of power movement, moving with a little bit more explosiveness, main strength block, some accessory movements to help complement strength blocks in other sessions, and then maybe a little bit of pump work, which we will go into. So if we look at, the sort of power priming, that sort of thing, we're looking at being a bit more specific to the main lift itself. So if the main lift is a deadlift, in this portion, we may do something very similar movement pattern, but just move it a little bit more power and intent. Okay, this is after we've done maybe some mobility work, so maybe some hips, some glute bridges, maybe some thoracic rotation, so maybe like thread the needle, and just maybe even a bit of like the assault bike, just get your heart rate elevated. Okay, now we want to make sure everything's fired up and we're familiar ourselves with the main movement patterns. So like I said, if we're doing a deadlift, we may look to implement some hinge work before we go into the deadlift itself. Okay, because from here we can then go into that key strength block, whereby the main session of the bulk of the session is focused, knowing that we're primed internally, externally, and we are good to go. Now, with the strength block of the session, this is going to be the bread and butter, and this is where your compound lifts are going to come into play. So for me, the main ones are going to be like a squat, bench, deadlift, an overhead press, maybe a dip, maybe a pull-up, but the big three are probably going to be your main ones. Okay, and these are going to be the main aim for our workouts. Obviously, most of us will probably train in the gym 3 times per week in terms of strength sessions, if we're also combining this with an endurance event. So you can see squat, bench, deadlift, there's your 3. These are going to obviously allow us to get a far better, greater return on investment than doing a pec deck and some cuffed lateral raises, and also allow us to have plenty of strength adaptation. So we still want to stay strong. We'll probably do sets, will vary, again, depending on your overall training volume and your recovery, but it may vary from 2 to 4 working sets. And your reps might be, will probably be more strength focused. So we're looking at that sort of 3 to 6 rep range, for example. Now, in terms of like rest times after this, these are big movements. You want to be going into each set trying to, perform at the highest level possible. So you are going to want to take your time in between your rest periods, okay? Anywhere from that 2 to 5 minute mark. It's going to allow you to get a little bit more recovery before you go into your next working set. Once you've done the main bulk of that work, your deadlift, it might be a trap bar, it might be a Romanian deadlift, or it might just be a conventional deadlift. It might be a box squat, it might be a dumbbell bench press, whatever. Once that's done, we can then look to go into some more accessory work, whereby we can shift the focus and apply some volume onto key muscle groups / areas we want to improve or focus on. So if we know we are limited and we've got maybe poor ability to rotate, there might be some rotation work. If we know that maybe we have some imbalances on one leg to another, we may look to do some single leg work, as an example. Here, you can use supersets, trisets, like a group, 3 exercises back to back, or like an every minute on the minute, whereby you might combine a few movements and get them done within a certain time frame. So this could be, like I said, a mixture of unilateral work, bilateral work, as well as core and trunk movements. Sets again will vary, 2 to 4 working sets, and this is probably a little bit more sort of 6 to 15 rep range, just giving us a little bit more bang for buck and actual feel, as opposed to just trying to move the weight from A to B. So you've come into the gym, you've done a little bit of an aerobic warm-up, so it might be a bit of an assault bike. You might have gone into some single leg glute bridges. You might have done some scapular pulls, and then you might go into something along the lines of a block pull, a couple of sets, and then go into your warm-up sets on your deadlift, and then you're good to work. You've done your strength block. You're now in this accessory portion of the session, whereby you choose 2, 3, maybe 4 movements, like I mentioned, for a slightly higher rep range to focus on areas you want to improve upon. Then you may finish with some form of pump work, some metabolic conditioning, whereby this is where you can have a little bit more fun, a little bit more play around of such, and is obviously an area where you might throw in your more isolated movements. And as much as it is great having big arms for your race photos, they're not going to actually help you cross the finish line. So that's why we do the other movements before and then finish off with some more conditioning work. Okay, you might again pair 2 to 3 movements and complete an AMRAP. So you might do something like 10 reps of 3 exercises, as many rounds as you can in a 5 to 8 minute period, 6 minute period, or whatever. Okay, it might be biceps, triceps, some lateral raises. It could be a farmer's carry, a banded kettlebell carry, and some push-ups. A banded kettlebell carry is fantastic. Something I did a few weeks ago at an in-person seminar I was at, and they had my arms, forearms, biceps just blowing up. So, with this, have some fun, keep it short and sweet, and ultimately the main portion of the workout is done at this point. So this is just about, again, putting a little bit more volume on some different muscle groups, thinking a little bit more functionally, and having a little bit more enjoyment as well. So there's a little recap as to, you can see why we don't want to train like a bodybuilder. I've been guilty. Obviously, I've trained like a bodybuilder since I was 17, and I'm very rigid. So I'm very uptight, rigid, not very mobile. So I know how important this is going to be, because this sort of training session is going to allow me to become more mobile. It's going to allow me to become more functional. It's going to allow me to have less sort of imbalances, or it's going to decrease my chance of injuries, which is the main goal when running a 50-kilometer ultramarathon, or whatever it is that the goal is I'm training for. You want them to align. Okay. As I've said, make sure your training aligns with your running goals or whatever endurance event that you're doing, because it's going to help prevent injuries and make you more efficient at running, which is obviously the main priority. Like I said, when we combine strength and train and endurance, one is always going to be more favorable than the other. One is always going to be more of a priority than the other. In this example, the running or the cardio or the endurance element is the most important. So the strength work is then sort of secondary to help accommodate for all of the work we're doing with the running, with the swimming, with the bike, whatever it may be. So that's how I want you to think about it. Follow a set flow / structure for your workout. So, you go in, a little bit of a warm up, a little bit of mobility, a few drills. You then may go into some power, some more explosive work just to get the CNS firing up and obviously acquire that skill. Then into the main strength block, then into some accessory work, and then a little bit of pump work to finish. And you should be done within an hour or so. And like I say, the accessory pump work will be done once the main session of the lift has been ticked off. Again, not rushing your warming up or getting into the session. You want to, by the time you've gone in, you might have done a 5 to 8 minute warm up with some mobility work. You might have then spent sort of 5 or so minutes doing some more explosive work and obviously that skill element of stuff. And then a couple of warm up sets on your strength work. You're probably looking at maybe 20 minutes into the session before that first working set. So do not rush this. That's the main bread and butter, and it's going to allow you to become a lot better in the other disciplines that you're training for. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an insight as to why I have the video as stop training like a bodybuilder. I can talk from this because that is exactly how I used to train. I used to train like a bodybuilder whilst doing my first ultramarathon, my second ultramarathon, and the first portion of the Ironman, and soon realised that it's probably not the best route to go down if I'm looking to maximize my performance. So I've learned it myself, and that is why I've created this video, and hopefully can help a few of you understand a little bit more as to why. So if you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, and I will make sure to see you on the next one.